our product marketing team, which is that bridge for us between marketing and product management, played a huge role in doing that market research. And we did the same thing. We had our product marketing folks on the ground, right there, trying to understand the market and then communicating that back to both the product and the sales and marketing go-to-market team. So if you can immerse yourself and get there and meet with partners, meet with other folks in the ecosystem that may not be competitors, highly recommend it. You'll learn more there, and it'll accelerate your success, I think, quite a bit if you can get on the ground and just really understand things versus trying to stay back at headquarters and do it through online research if you're a global company.
Welcome to How I Made It in Marketing from MarketingSherpa. We scour pitches from hundreds of creative leaders and uncover specific examples, not just trending ideas or buzzword-laden schmaltz, real-world examples to help you transform yourself as a marketer. Now, here's your host, the Senior Director of Content and Marketing at MarketingSherpa, Daniel Burstein, to tell you about today's guest.
One doesn't discover new lands without consenting to lose sight for a very long time of the shore. That quote is from Nobel Prize winning novelist André Gide, and I think there's a great lesson for marketers here. For 25 years, MarketingSherpa has published case study articles, and sometimes when I talk to marketers, they are so myopically focused on just the case studies from their industry. Look, we're an ideas profession, and sometimes to get the best ideas, you have to step away from the familiar, away from your industry, which is why I loved a story in a recent podcast guest application about a tech industry leader who learned the transformative power of digital marketing by pivoting away from the tech world for a bit to run a charity. We'll hear that story along with many more lesson-filled stories from my next guest, Tim Peters, the CMO of Enghouse Systems. Thanks for joining me, Tim.
Hi, Daniel. Great to be here.
All right, let's take a quick look at Tim's background so you understand who I'm talking to. He started his career very early on. He was a personal trainer at Bally Total Fitness. I think there's some marketing going on there. We might go back into the past and see what we can learn from that. But he's also had many tech roles. I mentioned he's been head of global demand generation at Scribble Live, vice president of global marketing and revenue operations at Doxum. And for the past 4 years, Tim has been at Enghouse. Enghouse Systems is a public company founded in 1984 that trades on the Toronto Stock Exchange. It reported $454 million in revenue for fiscal year 2023, and Tim manages a team of 52 at Enghouse. So Tim, give us a sense. What is your day like as a global marketing leader?
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, Enghouse Systems, we're a provider of vertical market software, and we're a global company in over 100 countries. So you can imagine those type of roles, dashboards have to be your best friend. And so that's generally where I like to start my day. Many of my folks have been busy for hours, on my team before I plug in, normally based in North America. And so number one thing I'm doing is looking at dashboards, checking in with my team, catching up with sales, seeing what's happened overnight. Being a global company, there can be a lot of things that have happened, after business closes in North America. And so dashboards and a strong cup of coffee are usually the way I like to start my morning.
Hopefully a strong dashboard too. Not just the coffee strong, the dashboard strong too. All right, well, let's take a look at some lessons you've learned from your career. The first one Anna mentioned in the opening, you say to leverage digital platforms to build strong communities and amplify your message. And you actually learned this outside of the tech industry. So how did you learn this lesson?
Daniel, I initially started my career, and gosh, that goes way back when you mentioned personal training at Bally Total Fitness. That's clearly a long time ago now. But my initial career was in sales. And so that was both in more traditional industries, but also in technology as well. And it was a bit of a tough time to break into marketing back then. And so for myself, I had founded a charity, as you mentioned, Canadian Hero Fund, that supports military families. And, we did everything on a volunteer basis. So we were, rubbing nickels together to try and get our name out there. And it led to a lot of, creativity being needed. And so, at that time, we had very limited funds, and that's where I discovered the power of digital marketing and what you could do with tools like Google AdWords and Bing and social media advertising as well. And so, again, back then our funds were very limited, and I was even new to marketing myself, coming up more of in a sales role previously in my career. And gosh, just the power back then of being able to reach folks through digital marketing. This is when Facebook was being founded and launching, and just the power to connect with your right folks, with your advocates and your community was just incredible. And those are lessons both just in terms of always being scrappy and acting like a startup. I keep that mindset today, even though I'm at a public company. And also, trying to stay on top of the latest tools and innovation, which at the time was digital marketing through channels like Facebook and Google AdWords. Really are, I think, important to stay on top of, the latest technologies like that.
Yeah, I mean, today it might be AI, right? But that brings up a question. So when it comes to marketing and digital marketing, advertising and digital marketing, it was true back then, probably even more so. It's true today still. The hard thing is perceived value, I feel like. And so especially for a nonprofit, how did you help people perceive the value of that nonprofit, right? Because things like print, or if you had the bigger budgets for that, right away, there's instant credibility. If you're just talking about Facebook, well, you don't know what's going on there. And so, for example, I interviewed Gary Stein, who was a CMO of Virtuo, on the How I Made It Marketing podcast. And one of the lessons he learned from someone he collaborated with was every click is a wish. And I love it. He told the story of how, people click, right? They have an expectation, and then you can't just, take them from an ad to a page and just disappoint them or do okay, right? You really got to wow them, right? That's a wish. Make that wish come true for them. And so it just kind of brings back to that topic I was asking about. Okay, there's this perceived value we have, and it's harder to perceive that value in the digital channel, whether that's for a nonprofit, whether that's for a tech company, but especially a nonprofit where it doesn't necessarily deliver a tangible product. You don't, even after you purchase, you don't have that tangible product in the end. So I wonder if there was anything you learned in using digital marketing, especially for a nonprofit, on how you can communicate that perceived value through digital channels.
Yeah, definitely. It's such an interesting area to discuss. You have that digital component that maybe can initially drive traffic to whatever you're involved with, but you have to deliver on that promise as well. And for us, content was key. So when we were able to drive those initial clicks, for example, we, again, it was more sweat equity than dollars, invested a lot of time in creating powerful, incredible content and stories that folks could, then visit and watch and see when they actually visited our website. So for us, that was definitely a lot of video content. In our case, we were supporting military families. And so stories about maybe how we were supporting military families. In our case, it was a lot of academic scholarships. And so folks would become immersed in the content we were creating and get a sense of how their potential donation could have an impact and support a very worthwhile cause like the one we were working on.
Great, tell stories. So we mentioned Enghouse Systems, 100 countries you operate in. And I wonder what kind of lessons we can learn about operating in those different countries. One thing you mentioned is adapt your marketing to reflect cultural nuances for global success. So do you have an example of how you've done this?
Yeah, it's definitely puts a lot of stress on the marketing team, right? If you can imagine trying to operate in 100 countries, some of those are through partners, but imagine all the different languages, time zones, and as other global marketers out there, there's many different go-to-market motions as well. Some countries or businesses in B2B like to buy direct through channel. Some folks are okay, say, through learning more about products through digital channels. Others like to meet more face-to-face at trade shows. And so definitely, it's been a really interesting learning experience for myself as we've, for example, started to make an inroads more in the Middle East. And so we have just some amazing customers there now in the United Arab Emirates, in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, for example. But we had to learn, they are our customer and we have to follow their lead in terms of how they would like to learn about businesses, learn about various products. And so for us, being a North American headquartered company, definitely was a little bit different. And we learned the importance, for example, with our video telemedicine solution, that folks really wanted us to have a presence there, to have an office, to have employees there, to make it, so they felt we were there for the long term, for the best interests, in this case, of their hospitals and in their healthcare system. And so, that took us a while just to learn those type of nuances, to make sure we had people there, that we understood their local, in our case, in the healthcare system, the regulations they have, and then really promote what mattered to them in our marketing. And it definitely was quite a lot different than, more a direct approach, say in North America. We wanted to be there, be at trade shows, spend a lot of time discussing our expertise in the area, and really being there in person and localizing all of our content. And that seemed to make a real difference when the various organizations that we were speaking to knew we were there for the long term and wanted to be a partner with them to support their, in this case, their healthcare system with our telemedicine solutions.
Yeah, so it's very true culturally, internationally, and globally, but I've worked in the software industry early in my career. And part of it too was, telling customers that you fluently speak their language in terms of, okay, we understand this industry. So that's a great lesson. Even if you're listening and you're like, well, I don't operate globally, like I don't have to understand those cultural touchstones. You have to understand it for an industry.
Yeah.
You need to make sure you serve an industry. So from your experience, how much of that adapting to the market is marketing, messaging, and communication, which maybe kind of having that office there is, and how much is it the actual product changes and innovation to a product has to serve an industry, or a region differently than it would, let's say, here in North America? Because, for example, when I interviewed Tiffin Dono-Kwon, the CMO of Amplitude, on how I made up marketing, one of her lessons was bridge marketing and product for collaborative growth. And she felt that was just such a key role of a marketer. And she actually told the story of physically moving from the marketing building to the product building because it was so important for her to do that. So I wonder for you, Tim, when you talk about moving into a new market and understanding that culturally, obviously there's language, there's marketing, there's that go-to-market strategy, there's the channels, all of that's important. But what role as a marketer in a global company do you take in making sure that product is right for that region or for that country?
Yeah, gosh, the product marketing function at Enghouse, in that case, played a huge role in this, really understanding the markets, especially when you're working in regulated industries, to understand what's going to be table stakes to just operate there and have success. That can vary greatly from, not just region to region, but country to country, or in some cases, state to state, province by province, emirate to emirate. And so a lot of those can also have, different governing bodies. And so our product marketing team, which is that bridge for us between marketing and product management, played a huge role in doing that market research. And we did the same thing. We had our product marketing folks on the ground, right there, trying to understand the market and then communicating that back to both the product and the sales and marketing go-to-market team. So if you can, if you can immerse yourself and get there and meet with partners, meet with other folks in the ecosystem that may not be competitors, highly recommend it. You'll learn more there, and it'll accelerate your success, I think, quite a bit if you can get on the ground and just really understand things versus, trying to stay back at headquarters and do it through, online research if you're a global company. So yeah, great lesson, get on the ground, get there. And then on the cultural side, right, it's the little things. So we had great customers that have become friends, and they teach you the little things too, right? Of what hand maybe you should be eating with, right? Or different things like that. And just saves you from, it's a respect thing to understand the local culture and nuances. And so even those things, by being on the ground, just sets you up for success, and, putting the right foot forward and being respectful of local cultures when you are trying to do international business.
That's fantastic. There is something about going there. I went just actually right before COVID, went to a business. We were doing a training in Toronto, actually. And one of the things that struck me, it was so funny. It was flying through Boston and how the TSA treated us. And it was like, oh, God, come on, get everything there. Get moving, blah, blah, blah. And then I get to Toronto, and you got this wonderful airport on an island right in the middle of Toronto, and I go there, and I'm ready for that too. And they're helping us out, and they're so friendly and they're so helpful. And it was like such a difference too. I noticed when we actually spoke in that company about versus like having to almost like prove yourself if everyone's like looking ready to shoot you down, or they're coming in and welcoming and helpful. And so that's one thing I love about the Canadian culture, the Toronto culture.
That's great. I'm glad my fellow Canadians are keeping our polite international standards, are living that, in their day-to-day life. I'm glad you had a good experience.
We can learn from that. And in other places, it's important. So we talk about global markets, but tech companies, big companies, global companies, M&A is a huge part of it, right? And so having to understand the different cultures there for many tech companies is very acquisitive. You said foster trust and cooperation through transparent communication in M&A. So how did you do that?
Yeah, in my previous roles, I've been, in head of marketing roles at companies that were in the private equity space, where you're often doing an industry roll-up, which I think is becoming more and more a channel for growth. And we look at the statistics in terms of number of employees private equity funds now, have under management. It's becoming more and more of a mainstay in the world of technology and software. And so, during my time at a previous company, I think over maybe 18 months, we acquired and integrated over 10 businesses and, hundreds of employees. And so definitely some lessons learned there of the right way and maybe wrong way of how to, really partner and make sure that these acquisitions are a success and that employees feel welcome and that you start to realize the positive aspects of bringing organizations together. There was definitely, in earlier when I just started in the world of private equity, where one company we had acquired, the CEO was really struggling. We were having integration meetings and just didn't seem like he was, really, really in it, right, and engaging with the team. And so, one thing I learned was the importance of, maybe having some one-on-one conversations, really trying to build that personal relationship and trust. In this case, the CEO eventually opened up to me that, this was just so overwhelming for them. They were a small, sort of very tight-knit company. They were, I think 12 or 13 years old, and most of the company had been together for that time period. And so, to be acquired by a much larger company was just a bit overwhelming for them. And so once I understood that and how folks were feeling, we were able to, do a few things differently, like explaining why things were happening better, maybe adjust the pace of where certain things were happening. And so I think that was great in this case that the CEO felt heard. He was able to share some of the feedback and the pulse of his team. And so it meant, fast forward 6 months later, I don't think anyone from that company had actually, left. They were enjoying themselves. They were part of a bigger company with more resources to expand their products globally, and it ended up working out. But it's important to build those relationships with folks in that M&A environment and make people feel sure they feel comfortable if something is going from green to yellow or red, that they feel comfortable they can speak up and do it in in an environment where they don't feel like they're going to be penalized, that input's going to be incorporated and respected. And so for me, I definitely now, if I'm ever involved with an acquisition, the more time I can spend during due diligence or right after to get to know the team and build those relationships, and definitely helps. So highly recommend trying to get to know the folks you're going to be working with if you're working for a company that's acquisitive.
So that communication element is so important, and it's part of our role in marketing. But I also wonder, just from like a business leadership perspective, how much control do you give the acquiree in an integration? Because, like, for example, when I interviewed Onesa Landis, Vice President of Marketing from Octane, on How I Made It Marketing, one of her lessons was change. Even good change is hard, and everyone wants to be able to control or at least influence the change in their lives. And she was telling the story of coming into the organization as a VP of marketing, right? But I was thinking, like, boy, when I read your story, this is even like 10x or 100x for a founder in an acquisition. So, I mean, when you think of, if this is like the first time they've been acquired, this founder, they've been building this business. There's always a thought, I'm sure, of an exit strategy. Yeah. But, they think of the money, but they don't think of the, like, wow, this is both my baby and this kind of part of the world I control. And so I wonder, obviously, like, you are the acquiring entity. You have a certain plan for how you're going to, use that company. But, how do you balance, like, what amount of control you can give that acquiree?
Yeah, really interesting question, Daniel. And I may put on the acquired company CEO hat maybe to respond. And so, gosh, if you are in that position where you are looking to sell your company, or you're a marketer and on the leadership team of a company that may be going through a potential acquisition, definitely know who you're partnering with and who you're getting involved with, because there are different approaches to that question. Some acquirers will let you run independently, or maybe that's for a year. Some organizations may want to integrate you completely. And so your brand is retired, the product names are retired, and you're fully being integrated into the company. The marketing folks go into the marketing organization of the parent company. And so ask those questions and really feel comfortable with the answers when you are, if you are looking to potentially, sell your business. And there are those different, I think the positive thing is that there are those different entities that operate different business models, where some will, again, let you run independently. Some are, integrating everyone, very quickly within a month of buying a business. And so there are validity to those different business models, I think, right? But you have to, as the owner of the business or the CEO, you have to do what's right for your company and your employees, and know that there are different options out there depending on what you want to do with the business, how long maybe the owners want to stay involved, and those type of things. So definitely do your due diligence on the potential acquirer.
Yeah, due diligence works two ways. And, it's probably a little different for a public company, but for a private company, hey, it's not just about the number. Those big numbers look nice, but like you said, what's going to happen after that contract is signed, after the closing? All right, well, we talked about some lessons from some of the stories Tim has made in his career. In the second half of the episode, we're going to talk about lessons from some of the people he made those things with. But first, I should mention that the How I Made It in Marketing podcast is underwritten by MechLabs AI, the parent organization of MarketingSherpa. You can build a new artificial intelligence strategy or optimize your current AI strategy with an AI quick win intensive from MechLabs. Learn more at intensives.mechlabs.com. That's intensives.mechlabsai.com. All right, let's take a look at some lessons we could learn from some of the people you collaborated with throughout your career. Your first lesson, you mentioned embrace strategic thinking and creativity to drive measurable marketing outcomes, and you learned this from Mike Hennessy. How did you learn this from Mike?
So Mike Hennessy was my first ever, VP of marketing or boss in the world of marketing. As I mentioned a bit earlier on the pod, I started my career in sales, found a way to bridge into marketing through some of the work I did at Canadian Hero Fund, a charity where I got my first break in digital marketing. And, working with Mike was just great. He taught me those marketing fundamentals, especially, making sure you're tying things back to business value, and that you're really marketing the work you're doing internally as well. So the leadership team knows how you're, bringing value to the actual business itself. And so those are some great foundational years with Mike. And he's actually, in terms of a great thing for us marketeers to hear, he's actually the CEO of a company now, a fairly large company in Toronto, Canada. And so, I think we all need those mentors, especially when we're first starting off, and to have someone who put the time and invested in me and those marketing fundamentals set my career off, on a really exciting path. And I'm definitely grateful for that. If he's listening to the pod, I definitely owe him a coffee and a big thank you.
Well, thank you, Mike. And so when we talk about those marketing fundamentals, I wonder, we talk about all these strategic planning things. How much is it, like, how much would you say percentage-wise or something, I don't know, that you plan ahead and how your year or quarter or whatever is going to go? And how much do you pivot based on the opportunities you see either in the macroeconomic environment or in your specific marketplace? And one of the reasons I ask is because I saw part of your training, you are like certified in improv. And I thought like that is like such good training for marketers to have. So I wonder if there's anything you learned in that improv training that you've then been able to use as you've run marketing organizations, because I feel like we have our, planning our yearly, quarterly, whatever planning. And then my gosh, whatever happens, COVID happens, the rate cuts happen, whatever happens in a specific, client or acquisition or industry, all these things happen. So I wonder how you balance that between the planning between pivoting, and if there's anything you learned from improv that kind of helped you do that.
Yeah, great question, and it's really interesting how those two things can be related. Again, going back from Mike Hennessy, and I do this today, almost 20 years later, I will still have an annual marketing plan, and that's used in kickoffs with the sales team. Items that we, definitely feel strongly are going to be used for that year. It could be some of the big bets that you're on the hook for. It might be even big trade shows that are, those maybe the big industry events that you're definitely going to be doing. And I see layers around thought leadership or themes or product launches that are definitely going to happen that stay in there as well. But just like improv, you have to be ready for anything. And so definitely we will have quarterly updates on those plans in terms of what we do now. So maybe some of our initiatives aren't working as well. Some things or even products that we have are working better than others. And so with the case at Enghouse, with our sales partners, we were always in constant collaboration, and we'll update those plans on a quarterly basis. And from a PR standpoint as well, we're always observing for maybe something we could provide some thought leadership or commentary on a regular basis. We're sort of scanning the headlines as well. So maybe in terms of improv, right? That's a good example where you've got to be ready to use the improvisational skills to deliver something interesting to reporters on a moment's notice to maybe get you some buzz and some earned media.
Yeah, I mean, and for anyone looking at doing thought leadership or speaking training, I've heard it's very helpful training to have, is to actually be able to think on your feet like that. It's a difficult skill.
Yeah, and I would say, it was a lot of fun, and it is great if you're ever doing presentations, you're speaking at keynotes or events. That type of training, improv training, can really help. I've found, for public speaking events, and it was actually so good. I brought the improv coaches in to do some different work with our marketing and our sales team, and it was a hoot in terms of even sales folks, right? They need to be dynamic. They have to get the attention of prospects. And so we had some improv coaches at a couple of our sales and marketing kickoffs over the past couple of years. And it was a riot, a lot of fun. And I think people learned some pretty unique skills to help them with public speaking. Even during COVID, right? How can we be a bit more dynamic on video and funny and things? So, a bit of a funny tip, but worth exploring, I think, for any marketers and sales folks out there.
Well, I love that. Again, there's so many places we can learn from. It's not just within our industry, not just the exact things our industries are doing. If we want to truly be creative marketers, like where else can we learn from? So that was the way you invest in people, the way you invest in your team. One of your lessons is invest in people to foster talent growth and a collaborative team environment. I think that's a great example. But you mentioned specifically Angie Sabatino. So I wonder how you learned this in working with Angie.
Yeah, so Angie was really, when I was starting my career, my first summer intern or, sort of very junior employee back again, almost 20 years ago now. And, I couldn't say enough about her in terms of her passion for B2B marketing, her full stack marketing capabilities from, design to digital advertising to content creation. And we really, who would have thought at the time, but over the last 20 years, we've now worked at, 4 different companies together. And so from that marketing, intern role, I was looking at her title now, actually a VP of marketing now at a very large organization. And so I couldn't be more proud of that. And just a great example of, you want to invest in your people. You want to make sure that it's not just a job for folks, that they do have a line of sight to a career path for those that are ambitious and looking to grow their careers. And so that doesn't mean we've always worked together. It's been on and off for those years. But each time, I've been committed to making sure with Angie, in her case, right, that there's always a chance to grow, expand her expertise. And it's really great to see someone like that, where she's now mentoring the next generation of marketers and things like that, which is just amazing to see. So, we all have high pressure deadlines, targets to hit and things, but, any investment you can make in your team, it will pay off in spades. And, I just wanted to mention that with Angie and, a great example of someone, who again is now mentoring those next generation of marketers and, was a great partner over the last 20 years.
Well, I think that's a great kind of pairing there, what Mike Hennessy did for you and hopefully what you did for Angie Sabatino there. But let me ask, so this seems like the ultimate hiring win, let's say. Like, yes, you mentored her, but also that hiring win. How do you find and grow talent to build a team? Because this is one of the things that global marketing leaders have told me is just one of the most important and vital things to their role. Like when I interviewed Pete Housley, Chief Marketing Officer at Unbounce, and a fellow Canadian, by the way, on how I made it in marketing, one of his lessons is you are only as good as your team. And he told the story of at one point having 140 people reporting to him, but he didn't have a functioning leadership team in place. And he still felt like he had to be involved in too many things. And that was the real kind of evolution he made when he was able to have that functioning leadership team, when he was able to build that right team around him. So how do you grow talent? How do you build that team? How do you find that team? How do you build the team higher? All of those elements there, Tim.
Yeah, gosh, I couldn't agree more with your past guest. For myself, being in over 100 different countries, although I try and promote a flat and entrepreneurial environment, I am only as good as my team, right? I can't be monitoring every corner of the world, all of our, hundreds of campaigns and events running at any time. And so, gosh, it's definitely a key part if you want to be, running a global marketing team at a public company. So it's definitely a critical part is to hire those great people and find those great people. For me, you can't spend. You don't shortchange the interview process, right? I think, a bad hire where it's not a fit, gosh, it doesn't get better. I don't find, right? So invest in that upfront time to find the right candidates. For me, I've taken on an approach of trying to be very candid, right? At whichever organization I'm with at the time. You don't sugarcoat things. Try and be very straightforward about the company, the benefits, maybe some of the challenges or opportunities. That's really helped me a lot by being very specific about the company, the environment, and the culture. So then if you ask 3 or 6 months later, if they do join your organization, they feel that they knew exactly what they were getting into, at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, don't sell in an interview.
Yeah,
don't
exactly.
sell. I mean, you want to here are the pros and cons. Here's why. Because it's really just about fit. I don't think there's really, in my opinion, there's good or bad marketers so much. I mean, obviously some are better than others, but it's finding that right fit, isn't it, for your team? Like, okay, this person will fit in this role in our team, and some people just won't. And it's not only you understand that, helping them understand that too, right? Because you don't want them to come on board, and it's not a right fit for them.
Exactly. I try and be very specific about the role, what good looks like. I try and, if time permits, allow folks to talk to, peers at the company that are in similar roles. We're a big enough organization where we're not sort of single threaded in, say content marketing or digital advertising. And so as much as we can really try and share what a day in the life is like around the role by speaking to as many people and, really letting them interview us as well and understanding what the role is like. Because I agree, right, folks, it's more the fit than the people, right? Most folks are engaged, passionate. They're in marketing because they love it, and just making sure that what they want to be focused on a daily basis and how it's aligned to their career path matches the needs of the organization is really critical.
I like that. That's a nice tactic. Everyone can borrow from that tactic that's listening. So we talked about marketing planning and kind of how you set up your annual planning and then how you kind of flow down from there. I would imagine a key part of that planning is also getting the whole financials right with the organization. One of your lessons was align marketing strategies with financial accountability for strategic success. And you said you learned that from Vince Mifsud, who is the president of Enghouse Systems, your current company. So you were talking about that annual planning. Can you take us through, okay, now that's with you and your marketing team. Then how do you work with Vince or others within Enghouse to make sure that the financials and the marketing strategy are lining up?
Yeah, so Vince is the president of Enghouse, where I am now. Really passionate about marketing, which is exciting. He'd been the CEO of a few MarTech businesses in the past, so it's really great to have a marketing champion to be working with. And the other nice thing about Vince is that he's a chartered accountant as well and president of organizations. So for him to have both of those worlds together, it's a real pleasure to be working with him as the head of marketing at the organization. In terms of our approach and how we work together on the annual planning, we will do both like the creative side, as we mentioned, so the campaign calendar of events and digital strategy and content, and we will put that all together. We also then do both a bottoms up and a top down approach to try and hone in on what we'll be able to contribute in terms of things like pipeline and bookings from marketing. And so from a bottoms up perspective. My team will look at previous historical results, any new industry data in terms of, for every dollar B2B company is spending, how much pipeline and bookings they're getting, and we'll do some bottoms up analysis like that to put together an initial budget. We'll also get some insights sort of top down from the management team, from our board, from the sales leadership about what their targets are going to be. And, usually they're going up always, sort of year over year. So we'll get a sense of what those are. And then there's usually a certain percentage that we're responsible for of the overall target, for example. So say the sales team is responsible for $100 million in bookings. We may be responsible for generating 25, 30, 40% of that, depending on the year and how much budget we've been getting. And so we sort of triangulate from a bottoms up what's possible, looking at historical results and then looking at the corporate goals and how we can contribute that way. And then it's always a bit of horse trading, right? You want stretch goals, but you want them to be achievable as well. And so we sort of bring those two worlds together and end up with a challenging but fair target for the demand generation team. And all of that gets computed into things around profitability. And for us, being a public company, it's really important that, in our case, we even pay a dividend to shareholders and do a bunch of different things and have to make sure we have enough money to continually invest in our products. And so all of that comes out as well into a final business plan and operating model.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that. So you mentioned before having worked in private equity or private companies. Now it's a public company. As a marketing leader, what is the same and what is different between public and private? And so, for example, I interviewed J.D. Dillon, the CMO of Tygo Energy, which is a public company. And one of his lessons was businesses must have a relentless focus on ROI, which includes marketing. And he talked about those dashboard metrics, which you kind of mentioned in the opening, and how he's got to communicate them to the CEO and the chairman about ROI. One of the things early in my career, which just shocked me, is I got a chance to I was working in corporate communications and I got a chance to work on earnings calls. Okay. And, software companies, the software company is growing quickly, but the way the analysts would beat the heck out of the CEO, the CMO, the sales head on the call because, hey, we predicted it was going to grow 14%. And because of currency shifts or other things, it grew 12%. And I'm sitting there thinking, they grew 12%. That's pretty good. So just that pressure that you can be under as a public company. But as you mentioned, private equity, they're rolling up. I mean, they're putting in that money with a multiple because they have a specific, target and end date you're going for. So all that said, from your experience as a marketing leader, what are kind of the similarities and differences between public and private?
Yeah, great question. So, and even within the world of private companies, there can be some nuances, right? We've gone through an era where venture capital-backed companies were growth at all cost, right? And so, you would notice companies where maybe that ROI or as long as the revenue was coming, that you maybe didn't have to have profitable growth, for example. So it's really interesting, the different dynamics in private companies, that being one in terms of what good looks like. It may be, you're able to get a certain amount of budget because we're just trying to, either hit a home run and be a unicorn or go broke, right? And so those are different dynamics for marketing, which would get a lot of spend maybe for more branding and awareness type marketing, right? That wouldn't have a set ROI. We then mentioned private equity. They tend to, again, usually are focusing somewhat on profitability. They may have taken on debt to do acquisitions or different things, or have to pay interest, for example, on debt they would have done to buy various companies to do an industry roll up, and then all the way to public companies where you're definitely much more accountable. Everything's public. Titrations in the stock if you don't deliver on the promises you've made. So there's a lot more accountability. It's definitely not a best efforts basis like it might be in a private company. You have to deliver. You're accountable to shareholders, and so for us in our case, having those plans, we have to be fairly confident in our forecasting and to deliver for our shareholders. And so, otherwise, as a company, you can be penalized fairly seriously from the valuation of your company in the public markets.
And publicly too, right? And publicly, yeah. Well, so let me, as in marketing, I don't know, some companies are set up differently, and there's investor relations, and there's corporate communications, different things. But in marketing, do you look at shareholders and analysts as a target audience for you, right? I mean, I'm sure you've got your channel marketing partners, you've got your end customers, you've got all these different audiences that you're selling a certain thing, a product, or whatever it is, or to sell your product, but also, I mean, a share is essentially in some ways a product. There are regulations around that, quiet periods, all that, but do you look at, I mean, is that within the marketing purview? Hey, analysts and shareholders are ultimately a customer too that we have to market to and have a plan for.
Yeah, definitely. They are stakeholders, and we make sure that we are communicating often and frequently on public channels so folks can stay up to date on what we're doing. So that could be everything from case studies to press releases with new wins, customer wins, or a product launch. And so, definitely we have a strategy to make sure all of the various stakeholders are informed about what we're doing, because we represent them and we report to them. And it's really important that, especially, stakeholders being, actual owners of stock, and also analysts are up to speed on what we're doing. And it also includes, analysts as well. So analysts around, the Gartners and Forresters of the world as well, making sure they're up to date on, what we're doing from a product and product roadmap standpoint. So, like all public companies, we have quarterly, board meetings, and they're followed by time for analysts to have Q&A with us. And so making sure we're prepared for those questions, that they're up to speed on our strategy, and that we're able to communicate that in an effective way is definitely an important part of what marketing does.
So there's one last question. I wanted to work in it naturally. I could not make it happen. But we talked about your career, that you started as there was a personal trainer at, I think it was Bally Total Fitness, right? And I just question, you start there, then you go into this great career working with global marketing companies, tech companies. There's got to be something that you learned from being a personal trainer. And I say this because, to me, like, what we're essentially trying to do with marketing, we're either trying to keep a behavior going or change a behavior, right? And so these behaviors, like if it's for a B2B technical company or a telemedicine company, like, it tends to be around the way you're working, or, the products you're using, the services, the software, whatever, right? But for a personal trainer, it's one of the hardest things. It's the food you're eating or the activity you're doing or not doing. So for me, I started my first job like 9 years old as a paper boy. I actually learned so much from that job that I use today about, for example, I have to go and collect money, and like actually having those at bats that you would have to have in sales, of like, keep having those at bats, collect that money. And so I just want to think, going back to that very first job you had, was there anything that you learned as a personal trainer that you were then able to apply as a tech marketing leader?
Sure, there's a few things, and it was a really great start. It sounds like just like your role was as well for yourself in your career. In personal training, you're in sales. It's a commission-based role, and so having that sales background and having to sell yourself and be confident, definitely helps me if I'm doing anything on stage or presentations. Having started, over 25 years ago doing those type of roles definitely helped. And that background of selling, I think, has really helped my career as well, because I'm much more easily able to partner with sales leaders, which is critical in B2B anyways, and B2B software sales. And so having that background doing sales gives me credibility. I can relate. You hear so much about maybe marketing throwing leads over the fence and not sure what happens to them afterwards. And so knowing the trials and tribulations of sales and how difficult a job that is, both gave me empathy for sales, but also, some credibility, I think, in terms of partnering with sales as well. I think the other interesting point would be around knowing your customer. So, personal training is a high-end, almost luxury item for folks, right? And so to keep and retain and keep those customers that you're working with in personal training, you really had to bear hug them, know everything about them, what their vision, what their goals are for the future, and create, custom programs for them, for training, for eating, and for health, and then deliver results for them as well. Not just, they had to see improvement. And so I think that really relates to marketing these days. You've got to really understand your customers, understand, what pains, what challenges they're having, and reflect that in the products and services you offer. You can't stay high level. You've really got to know the customers and why why existing customers want to work with you and why they continue to work with you to avoid churn, and then use that data to attract new customers as well in similar industries.
Well, I love to have that plan, but then, like you said, they got to see results. It could be the best plan in the world, but if they're not seeing results, they're not going to come back to you. The same is true in personal training. The same is true in B2B tech software. We talked about go on.
Oh, I think we're moving more to that world, right? With software, more outcome-based software, right? So to be able to show in dashboards in real time what those results are, with AI, I think we're moving more and more to that sort of outcome-based software, and so we've got to be able to deliver that, and then as marketers, really adequately promote that change and how our products are delivering outcomes.
Right. Make sure that getting back to what you talked about, the nonprofit, there's a perceived value, letting them actually see the value that they're getting, actually perceiving that value that we're delivering. I like that. So we talked about a lot of different things about what it means to be a marketer through all your many lessons, all your roles. If you had to break it down, what are the key qualities of an effective marketer?
Yeah, big question. For me, gosh, so I think maybe we'll start with some of the higher level items. I think curiosity is really important, right? Marketers to be curious about their audience, their customer needs, what's going to generate ROI. I think curiosity is super critical. It'll help drive innovation. You have to stay curious because marketing is always changing. And although we're becoming, AI and more data centric, I think curiosity and creativity is what's going to help us stand apart from our competitors. I think a close point to that would be adaptability as well. The market is always changing so much. We don't live in a world of set it and forget it. We've got to be granular. We've got to be diving into the results, looking at the numbers, and really trying to understand things. And it's always going to be, really dynamic. Depending on the seniority of the role, I think strategic thinking is really important, right? To have that high level view. So as you become more senior, really understanding that, overarching view of things is definitely going to be critical, and combining that with analytical thinking. So you've got to be comfortable with numbers. You've got to be comfortable with the analytics to be able to report to your board, to your CEO on what's working and what's not, and justify next best investment and getting incremental marketing dollars. You've really got to nail reporting and analytics. And, we're almost half, financial analysts at this point, or, at least be sure you have someone good on your team that can help you prepare those numbers.
I like that. Wow, that's bold. Almost half financial analyst. Yeah, there's the many skills you need as a marketer. So, well, thanks for sharing so much about your career today, Tim. I really learned a lot.
This has been great, Daniel. Always been a big fan of the podcast, and I'm really happy to be on. And hopefully, there's a few ideas there that folks might be able to incorporate into their daily lives as marketers.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone for listening. I hope you did get some lessons today.
Thank you for joining us for How I Made It in Marketing with Daniel Burstein. Now that you've gotten inspiration for transforming yourself as a marketer, get some ideas for your next marketing campaign from Marketing Sherpa's extensive library of free case studies at MarketingSherpa.com. That's marketing, SHERPA.com.